Hey guys, how are we doing? Crypto Insight UK here, bringing you back another YouTube video. So today we've had the weekly close for crypto generally, obviously because we're on Monday. I'm recording a little bit later today, so during this recording, the US market I think will open. I think it opens in about 10 minutes, if I'm right. Yeah, it opens in about 10 minutes, but so we could see some volatility during the recording of this video. But what we've seen is the highest ever weekly close for Bitcoin. I'm still in exactly the same boat that I was in last week, and that's why I had Trading Different open when we started the video, because as we can clearly see, we have liquidity above us on the hourly and below us. So where we go in the short term, I don't know, and I said this last week, and well, I was pretty much right with I don't know, because we haven't done anything. Literally, we've stayed within a range of about, I don't know what that is, let's say 115,000 to 120,000, $5,000, less than 5% for Bitcoin since about the last 2 weeks. So I don't know what happens in the short term. Do we sweep this liquidity below us? Do we come further down? I don't think we come down as far as 106k, but I do think we could definitely see 113k. But we also could quite easily squeeze up to 121. And then if we take us out the higher time frames, this is where I get more openly and obviously bullish. If we get up to like 121, I think we'll probably start to take this liquidity and squeeze up higher towards 135 plus. Been saying the same thing for a while. This is just a choppy range. I think it's been an absolute blessing opportunity to add to alt positions. I've been saying that exact same thing as well. We've been watching Bitcoin dominance. If we just take us to the lower time frames here to have a quick look at that, what we've seen is Bitcoin dominance bounced and then rejected the level pretty much that we discussed. Maybe it's having another bounce today. I don't know. Things could change as the US opens, as we saw yesterday, the deal between the US and Europe. Whether that has any effect on the US markets or not, I don't know. There's narrative towards Iran this morning again, so I don't know whether these things will have an effect on the markets or not, whether they're priced in now, whether people are fed up with those sorts of narratives. I really don't know. But what I do know is, and what I do think is, we're going to see a push for crypto across the board at some point. I think this stop out or stall out in Bitcoin dominance specifically, which is obviously indicating how altcoins perform, is a temporary thing, like a short-term thing. I think that even the stall out in Bitcoin price action is a short-term thing. If we go and look at equities just quickly, and I know this isn't an indicator of what crypto is going to do, but they're at all-time highs. The S&P is at all-time highs. The Dow Jones is looking to break out to all-time highs. Commodities are pushing higher. We've got even Coinbase, the app, as in like the Coinbase app, which has been a bit of a foreshadowing object for crypto, has broken to all-time highs. Yes, it's coming back to back test, but potentially looking to open green today. But again, haven't kept too much up to date with the US equities. At the time of recording, we're having a slight pullback on crypto, but I do still think exactly the same as what I've been discussing. I think that it's time to be. I'm looking at Doge. Obviously, I've discussed this on the newsletter, which is where I discussed Doge against Bitcoin. And I think that this is a serious pattern to be looking at. I'm going to have a look at it right now. I can show you it in real time, Doge Bitcoin. And then we're going to have another look at Trading Different in a second. Because I want to show you something else on there. I'm going to show you XRP. I'm going to show you a few other things. If we look at Doge Bitcoin, we're going to take us to the daily just quickly. What we can see in the last cycle is Doge effectively triple tapped to low. Put us on the 3-day. I think it's more effective. Triple tapped a low range. On the third tap of this range, it did actually sweep the lows. And what we've done this time is triple tap to range. On the third tap, it did actually sweep the lows. And then when we came out of this box and held above it as support, when we came out of this box and held above it as support, that essentially indicated it was the last time that we tested this area before Doge really went on a run. And I think that specific discussion there is relevant across the whole of crypto. I think if we go to the weekly closes, a lot of things are looking pretty good. We came back and back tested that box specifically here for Doge. Just look at XRP. XRP back tested previous range highs with a wick, held the support and closed above the support level. ETH looks fantastic. It's pretty much at all-time highs. We'll look at trading different here to look at ETH. That's one of the things that I wanted to show you guys. If we look at ETH on trading different, if it loads, what we can see is there's significant liquidity above us for ETH, and that is all-time highs, and we're within touching different distance, as in from where we are right now, and obviously that includes the pullback we're having so far this morning, which could reverse or could continue. Like again, I don't know in the short term. It's 11% or 12% to take all the liquidity, or realistically just to wick into it 7%, and that's all-time highs there for ETH. I showed on Twitter this morning where I wrote about ETH. We actually wrote about saying there was a good opportunity on April the 25th, which was here. I showed you the liquidity above us and said, look, not a bad time risk to reward wise to be getting into ETH. Everyone's throwing shit at each other and all the liquidity is to the upside, and we've basically gone for the liquidity hunt on that, and we're probably about to get that. Maybe that's today, maybe that's tomorrow, maybe at some point this week. Maybe it needs a bit more strength, I don't know, but I just think imminently we're going to take that. And if we do, then we will see other alts, especially in the ETH ecosystem, start to pop off, similar to how what we've seen with ENA. I did take my profits maybe a little bit too early here. I took them about 48 cents, which was about here. What I thought was there is a chance that we haven't quite broken out yet, and we could just wick the highs and then come down again. But it didn't really affect me because I was trying to take into cash it gives me more scope to hold XRP for longer now, essentially. Now, a lot of people ask me what my targets are for XRP this cycle, and realistically, my minimum targets are double digits. We can discuss until you're blue in the face what comes next in the short term. I personally believe that Bitcoin dominance is going to continue to lose strength, and I also personally believe that we go lower than the lows, and in that case, a significant loss of strength should lead to a significant increase in price for altcoins. In fact, it does, because there's nowhere else for the money to go, unless we go heavily into stable coins, of course. So, in terms of dollar targets, said minimum double digits. When we get closer to these areas, I can give you more of an accurate, for what I think to be taking profits, price targets. But realistically, no one ever gets the exact top. No one ever times the exact top. We can give you rough areas, and even the rough areas could be wildly wrong, as proved by my discussion in this newsletter actually this week. Arthur Hayes essentially came out and wrote a newsletter called Timestamp, where he said he thinks we could see $100 trillion by the time Trump leaves office in 2028, which is about a 25x rise from here. That's what he thinks the market cap of crypto could be, and he's a much smarter man than I. And like, this guy literally invented perpetual futures, so the futures contracts that we use on every exchange were literally invented by Arthur Hayes, who was arbitrage trading Bitcoin before I even knew about it, driving from Hong Kong to China to buy and sell Bitcoin in cash because of the border arbitrage opportunity that you could get by driving over the border. So, and he's also been a macro guy, and he hangs around with the macro guys, and a lot of the macro guys are saying, look, I'm looking for 100 trillion in the next 5 years, and Hayes has said here in the next 3 years. And I've been saying 10 trillion this cycle. So that's like a year, 2 years, whenever this cycle might end. I think it could be now. Like, we could just see it quickly. But I've been saying 10 trillion. And I've been like called a moon boy for that. But realistically, I think we're underpricing the potential upside in the market. And that's why I think that altcoins are such a good buy right now. Because realistically, well, I keep saying realistically, sorry. If we go back to Doge, I'm going to show you Doge again. I completely understand people's argument where they say that I'm an idiot, because looking at this chart, this is Doge versus Bitcoin. What you're basically saying is, from here, that Doge could do, well, there it did a 4,900% gain. But what I'm saying is, from here, Doge could do a 2,300% gain against Bitcoin. That's a 23x. And obviously Bitcoin could come down in price, so that would make it easier. But even if Bitcoin comes down 50%, it would still be like an 11x in price for Doge. And that's based on the assumption that Bitcoin goes like 50k and it makes that move. But like if you do a 23x, 11x would take us to $3. 23x would take us to $5.70. And then you do that, and then you add then you work out the market cap, and you start to think that's not, how can that ever be possible? Like you look at XRP, for example, and you're like, and I think XRP, as I said, goes to at least double digits. It could go to 18, 19, 20, low 20s. It could even extend to 30s if we start to use looking at XRP dominance charts, where I think we're going to go to like 20%. And this is where it's really difficult to be an analyst at this point in the cycle, because I genuinely believe the things and the charts that I'm creating for you just based on TA, like with no emotion and no fundamental backing in terms of the technical side. And then when I try and like apply the emotional or narrative or fundamental side to things, I start to think, how can this be flipping possible? But then you look through previous cycles and look at the massive amount of gains that we've made each cycle. It's just when it starts to become larger figures, it almost seems less possible. But long story short, guys, is the predictions that I'm giving, they're based on technicals. They're based on what I actually think non-emotionally is the most likely outcome. And I also have to check myself sometimes when I talk about things. But I feel like the best way to do things in crypto is to just look at what the charts are telling you and not worry about anything else. All the rest of it is extra info. So the news, the SEC news, for example, for Ripple, it might be like Elon Musk might be tweeting about Doge for Doge. Like all these sorts of things can give you bits of help and hints towards tops and this sort of thing. But the charts are where you should really be creating your underlying structure, and because they don't lie. All the charts are literally numbers on a screen that represent human psychology of whether they want to buy or sell an asset, and what they've done historically. That's it. And we use that to create projections to the future, and the historical data has created accurate projections, and you can see that quite clearly. And we'll use Doge again. You can see that quite clearly. Historical price action has created accurate projections. This is a 4.236 Fibonacci retracement extension that Doge quite clearly met against Bitcoin in the last cycle. We sent it to the 4.236 and we did the move realistically in, let's just say from the period where I think we are now, we moved to the high in 119 days or 17 weeks, and in that time it did a 46x. Now I've shown you this time it's a 23x or whatever it is to the highs, but what's to say we can't do a move like that again of a similar sort of size? I don't know what the answer is. Again, 117 days, that would mean we could be at this price by mid-November. And again, it doesn't have to play out perfectly. The time could be completely different. I could be wrong on the structure, but what we're saying is this is what the structure is showing. That's essentially it. I haven't got too much more to explain than that. I've tipped a few other interesting tokens in the newsletter. I think you should read about XMR because I don't think enough people have exposure to or have read much about XMR. It's a privacy token. I just think this chart looks kind of mental. This is 2014 and it rose even through the bear all the way up to 2017. And since 2017, XMR hasn't managed to break its all-time high, but that's a decent cup and handle, in my opinion. And I feel a full fib extension would take us to about 36 billion. The other thing is with privacy tokens is there's a provable market for privacy tokens. People thought crypto originally was going to be anonymous transactions outside of legacy finance. And that was what created our initial market. Now, as crypto rises in market cap, generally, I presume privacy tokens will keep a percentage, whatever this percentage might be, and it might increase over time or it might not, but they should hold strong some percentage of the crypto space, because some people want to keep their transactions completely anonymous. So definitely something to consider there with privacy tokens generally. I use Monero as my example, but because the chart looks pretty good too. But yeah, maybe have a look at and think about that thesis as well. But to finish today, I just wanted to mention Flare, because I think Flare's starting to look pretty good here. Flare's weekly had quite an interesting close. We closed above our recent resistance. Again, today everything is looking a bit red right now, but the US market has just opened, so let's see if this reverses. I think Flare could do very well this cycle when we start to consider elements of like DeFi, and we also saw Hugo Filion talk about potential of a stable coin on Flare backed by XRP, and I think that even ideas and speculation on assets like this, if they when they start to come into fruition or get close to fruition, it will create significant hype for assets like Flare. Like if we look at like ENA has been one of the tokens that I tipped and has been doing really well. We bought at 24.5, 25 cent, and now we're at 66. And yes, I sold most of my bag at 48 cent. Still made a decent flip on that. But the point is, ENA is a DeFi token with a stable coin, which is USDE. USDE is at 7.5 billion market cap. ENA is at 1.6, I think now. So what I'm saying is, if you back any token with like an ecosystem where you're going to increase TVL and you're going to start to tie in other communities and stuff like this, brings in speculation. Speculation immediately brings, or often brings, positive price action. And then positive price action brings more people who build higher TVL and more speculation and more positive price action. If you can do that at the same time as you lock in supply for an asset like Flare, which you need to use as collateral for like XRP DeFi, it's when you can get these extreme upside moves, because you're seeing massive extra demand and hype around an asset which has diminishing supply, and that's when you see large upside moves and squeezes. So that's the sort of thing that I'll be looking for a lot of altcoins, realistically, because as soon as we start to get in this crazy period, all of a sudden people are going to announce things. I think Ripple obviously being the announcer. XRP is not going to announce anything, being just a token, but Ripple might start to come out and see maybe another acquisition or two, maybe some banking license being accepted, the SEC dropping the case, XRP ETF. 1,000,001 different potential speculative moves could come out of Ripple that could catalyze this XRP move. But I do think that it's just time to be wary of peak narrative. Now, I think it's difficult because when we start to get into peak narrative period, price starts to move massively. You could see 50, 60% days, and you don't really want to miss out of one of them to the upside. But the important thing is to try and take profits when the money starts to mean a lot to you, because it's only money on a screen until you start to realize it. So yeah, I pretty much rambled a little bit, but I don't have too much extra to update you on than normal, other than the fact I think that we're imminently going to see a continuation for altcoins and probably Bitcoin, but imminently could still be 10-15% chop to the downside, but it's nothing in the grand scheme of things. Like, look at ENA, for example, up like 200% or more maybe in the last 3 weeks. Well, 150% in the last 3 weeks. It's a fantastic move. I think you'll see other alts do that. Realistically, XRP from the lows took 4 weeks and it moved up 68%. And then so far, this pullback this is from candle closes, obviously, not wicks. This pullback is 7%, 7.5% after a 68% move to the upside. So what if we come back another 7? I don't think necessarily that we will. I think the weekly close looks pretty good. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, what if we come back another 7 or 10 or even 20% to the downside? Like, we've done a 68% to the move to the upside, and we're working out the range still until we start to see proper price discovery, and that's across the board. But I think ETH could see price discovery very soon. You've seen the liquidity above us. We've seen the liquidity above us in Bitcoin. I think it's soon, but I don't know what happens between now and soon. It could be today. It could be this week. It could be next week. If you get an opportunity to buy more dips of your favorite altcoins, like, this is the time to get more exposure and max exposure, in my opinion. And then I think we should progress to the upside. Let's see. I could be wrong on that, but I know from my perspective, we will see significant upside over the next 6 months or so, for altcoins generally, and crypto. I think we'll see towards the $10 trillion mark in the next 6 to 18 months. Whenever that comes, I don't know. Again, it could be a month or 2 months, or it could be 6 to 18. I don't know. So prepare for short-term volatility. Feel what the market feels like. People are saying they're seeing euphoria. I don't agree with that. I think people feel bearish still, and we're nearly at all-time highs, or we had the highest ever weekly close for Bitcoin. ETH looks like it's towards all-time highs. So I think we've still got a significant journey to the upside to go, but that could happen in a short space of time whenever that kicks off. So with all that being said, guys, I will leave you there. I've given you a long video today. I'm sorry it was a bit late. I had a few things to do this morning. And I hope this gives you more of a perspective on what is to come, basically from my perspective. I'll leave it. Stop. Peace up. A-Town Down Crypto Insight UK would say. If you want to trade leverage, I have affiliate links to MEXC and WEX in the description below. I do use both of those exchanges. They're both non-KYC that you can go and try out. If you want to read the weekly newsletter, it's completely free. weeklyinsight.substack.com, or it's in a link in the description as well. We're now 82nd in the world for most read newsletters, and we have 2,700 weekly readers. So I appreciate everybody who reads from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Peace up, A-Town Down. If you enjoyed, please do like, subscribe, and share with a friend.